Only 10 seconds left. Imagine that, just 10, before everything you are. Everything you've done, every trace of your existence is wiped clean, like chalk washed off a board. Heaven doesn't wait, it doesn't hesitate, it doesn't bargain. When the clock runs out, your name disappears, like it was never written at all. Most people live as if time is endless, as if their name is carved in stone. But what if it isn't? What if it's written sand and the tide is already rising? 10 seconds. That's all. The difference between being remembered and being erased. Between opening the door or watching it slam shut for emergency has a way of tearing the mask off. People walk around every day pretending they've got time, pretending tomorrow will always show up, pretending the world owes them another chance. They stroll, they crawl, they delay. They push things away, thinking life is patient, that it will wait until they feel ready. But urgency doesn't wait. Urgency slams down like a hammer, and suddenly all the stories, all the excuses, all the careful disguises people wrap themselves in get ripped apart. That's when you see who they really are, not who they pretend to be. Because in urgency, there's no room for masks, no room for games, no room for the luxury of lies. It's easy to talk big when you think there's endless time. Easy to say you'll change, you'll fight, you'll rise. You'll become someone new someday. Someday is the lie people feed themselves so they don't have to act today. But when urgency strikes, someday disappears. The clock ticks louder, the walls close in, and the truth comes crawling out of your chest like a beast you've been keeping chained. Will you move or will you freeze? Will you fight or will you fold? That's the moment urgency reveals the truth. And the truth is, most people aren't brave. They're just comfortable. Strip away the comfort. Add the ticking clock, and their courage evaporates. You ever notice how people make promises when they think they have time? Promises to themselves, to others, to life. I'll start tomorrow. I'll try harder. I'll make it right. They sound noble. They sound convincing. But urgency doesn't care about promises. It cares about action. 10 seconds left, and those promises become worthless. Words can't save you when the clock is laughing in your face. Urgency asks only one thing: will you act now, or will you crumble in regret? That's the test. And it's a test most people fail, because talking is always easier than moving. But urgency burns away talk, and what's left, raw, exposed, is the truth. Think about it. When someone's running out of time, their real self leaks through. The polite, careful version of them vanishes. They speak what they mean, do what they feel, because there's no room for delay. That's the gift and curse of urgency. It rips off the fake layers and forces you to meet yourself. Maybe for the first time. Maybe you won't even like what you see, but it's real. And that's why urgency matters. Without it, most people never get honest. They live entire lives as lies, pretending they'll fix it later, only to find later never comes. And then what? Then their name fades before it was ever truly alive. Urgency turns the mirror cruel. It reflects what you've been hiding, the decisions you avoided, the truths you buried. 10 seconds left and suddenly the questions get louder. Why didn't you move? Why didn't you speak? Why didn't you take the chance? Those questions don't haunt you when time is plenty. They wait quietly because they know their moment is coming. And when it comes, they scream so loud you can't escape them. That's urgency. It's the moment of confrontation, when all the things you tried to bury dig their claws into your chest and demand an answer. And the worst part, you can't lie anymore. Urgency doesn't give you the luxury of pretending. The beauty of urgency, though, is that it creates clarity. 10 seconds left and suddenly, you know what matters. The noise falls away, the distractions vanish, and your mind sharpens like a blade. You realize what you should have done, what you should have said, what you should have fought for. Urgency doesn't just strip you, it exposes the essence. It shows you the raw truth about what you care about most. But by then, for most, it's too late. The clock doesn't rewind. The second hand doesn't stop. And that's why urgency is feared. Because it doesn't just reveal the truth. It reveals it when there's no more time to fix it. And maybe that's the real joke. People spend their whole lives running from urgency, chasing comfort, telling themselves they'll change tomorrow. But tomorrow isn't promised, and urgency is always closer than they think. All it takes is 10 seconds for the illusion to shatter, for the truth to be dragged into the light. And when it does, there's no running, no hiding, no more masks, only urgency. Only truth names, they sound permanent, don't they? Written on birth certificates, etched into gravestones, stitched into the fabric of families. People like to believe their name will outlast them, like it's carved in stone, untouchable. But names vanish faster than memories. They fade like smoke in the air, disappearing before you even realize they're gone. A name is only as strong as the voices willing to speak it. And when those voices go silent, so does your existence. That's the cruel trick life plays. It convinces you your name matters more than it really does. But in the end, it's as fragile as paper in the rain. About how many names you've forgotten. Old classmates, people you once saw every day, neighbors who used to wave when you passed by. Their names meant something once, didn't they? They carried weight, history, meaning. Now they're gone, erased from your mind without a fight. That's how it works. You spend your life trying to build a legacy, chasing recognition, craving immortality through letters stitched together in a specific order. But time doesn't respect that. Time erases everything. Your name is nothing more than a temporary tattoo on the skin of the world, and sooner or later, it fades. People cling to their names because they think it makes them real. They think as long as someone says it, they still exist. That's why they're obsessed with fame, with leaving a mark. They want their name on buildings, on screens, on records, thinking that will save them from oblivion. But even the biggest names are swallowed eventually. Kings, conquerors, legends go back far enough and their names vanish too. Whole empires fall into dust, and the names that once ruled them aren't even whispered anymore. So what chance do you think you really have? That's the reality no one wants to face. Your name isn't a shield, it's a shadow and memories. They're even worse. Memories slip faster than names. A name might stick in someone's head for years, but the details, the essence, the story behind it, that's the first to disappear. Someone might remember your name, but forget your face, forget your voice. Forget the way you made them feel. Then the name becomes hollow, just a sound without substance. It doesn't represent you anymore. It's just an echo, and echoes don't last. They bounce around for a while, then fade into silence. That's all a name ever is. An echo waiting for the silence to swallow it. The most tragic part is how desperately people try to fight this truth. They scramble to make their names matter, carving them into monuments, burning them into history books, tattooing them onto other people's minds through fame or infamy. They think if they make their name big enough, loud enough, it won't vanish. But even the loudest thunder fades after the storm. Even the brightest fire burns out. Time doesn't care how hard you scream your name into the void. It's still going to erase it. That's the one thing you can't beat. No matter how clever, no matter how powerful, no matter how unforgettable you think you are. And yet, in this cruel erasure, there's a strange kind of freedom. If your name is destined to vanish, if it's guaranteed to fade, then why cling so tightly to it? Why waste your life protecting it, polishing it, worrying about how others will remember it? You won't be here to hear it anyway. Maybe the real trick isn't to preserve your name, but to live in a way that doesn't depend on it. Maybe the name doesn't matter at all. It's the fire behind it, the moments lived, the scars left on the world that carry any weight, because names vanish. But the impact, the shift you cause, the cracks you leave behind in the walls of this reality, those linger, even when the sound of your name has long since dissolved. But of course, most people can't handle that. They want the comfort of believing their name makes them immortal. They want to believe when they're gone, their name will still echo forever. They can't face the silence that waits when the last voice stops saying it. And that's why names vanish faster than memories. Because memories are tied to feeling. And feelings burn deeper than sound. Someone might forget your name, but they'll remember how you made them bleed, or laugh, or break. Long after the letters of your identity have slipped from their tongue, and when even that fades, then you're truly gone, erased not just from heaven's books, but from the minds of men to urgency. It has a way of peeling back the layers. When the clock is ticking, when the pressure is suffocating, when time is dripping away like blood from a wound, that's when the mask slips. That's when you see who you really are, not the rehearsed version you show the world, not the calm, smiling lie you sell to yourself. Urgency doesn't care about manners. It doesn't care about politeness. It shoves you into a corner and whispers, "Show me." And in that corner, when every second feels like a punch to the ribs, the truth starts to bleed out. The truth that was always there, but hidden behind excuses, delays, and pretty little distractions. You know why urgency is so dangerous. Because it's honest. Most people don't live honestly. They live behind comfort, pretending they're in control, pretending they have time, Pretending tomorrow will bail them out. But urgency laughs at tomorrow. It slams the door shut and says, now. And that word terrifies people, because a now doesn't let you stall. It doesn't let you plan, polish, or practice. It forces you to act raw, unfiltered, unprepared. That's when your true nature crawls out. When there's no time to think, only to react, you discover whether you're a fighter, a coward, or a liar most people fold. That's the cruel beauty of urgency. It exposes weakness faster than strength. The ones who spend years building their perfect image. The hardworking one. The kind one, the noble one. They're the first to crumble when time squeezes them, because urgency doesn't respect images. It rips the costume right off and reveals the skin underneath, the messy, trembling skin no one wants to admit they wear. And that's the thing. Urgency isn't there to flatter you. It's there to corner you, to crush the illusions, to make you face yourself without escape. Ever notice how people make bold claims when they think time is endless? If I had the chance, I'd do this. If I had the opportunity, I'd take it. If it came down to it, I'd fight. Empty words, cheap promises. They love the sound of their own voices. But urgency doesn't care about what you would do. It demands to know what you'll do right now. And right now, stripped of fantasy, stripped of safety, stripped of the luxury of endless time. Most people show their truth. They hesitate, they run, they choke. That's why urgency exposes reality. It leaves no space for the lies people cling to when the world feels generous. It's almost funny. You'd think urgency would create heroes. All that pressure, all that fire, surely it would forge diamonds. But no, diamonds are rare, and urgency makes that obvious. Most crumble like ash. Most realize they were never built for fire. They were built for comfort. And when comfort is ripped away, they collapse into dust. The few who rise. They don't rise because they're better. They rise because urgency showed them what they already were. It didn't give them strength. It revealed it. That's the difference. Urgency doesn't create truth. It unmasks it. And that's why urgency is feared more than failure. People aren't really afraid of losing. They're afraid of finding out who they actually are. They're afraid that when time runs out, they'll learn the truth about themselves. And that truth won't match the story they've been telling. That's why they avoid urgency. They avoid deadlines, risks, decisions. They hide in routine, in comfort, in delays, because those places let them keep pretending. But the moment urgency arrives, all those walls collapse. The spotlight turns on, and the actor has no script, just instinct, just truth. So what happens when the clock runs low? When the 10 seconds tick by like gunshots? When every breath feels stolen and the next one isn't guaranteed? That's when urgency strips everything away, and what's left is raw and undeniable. Some scream, some freeze, some burn, some fight, but no one hides. That's the gift of urgency. It doesn't care if you're ready. It doesn't care if you're afraid. It doesn't care what story you've been telling yourself. It just wants to see you naked, not in body, but in truth. And truth, when the seconds are slipping away, is the one thing you can't disguise. Doors, they don't stay open forever. People like to think they do. They imagine opportunity as this polite little guest, sitting patiently, waiting for them to get ready, waiting for them to tie their shoes, comb their hair, finish their excuses. But doors are not polite. They creak open for a moment, just wide enough to step through, and then they slam. Sometimes softly, sometimes violently, but always decisively. And once they shut, you can scratch, claw, cry, scream. It doesn't matter. They don't open again just because you suddenly decided you were ready. Life doesn't wait for your timing. The door opens when it wants, not when you want. The cruel part is how people trick themselves. They see the door and say, "I'll step through tomorrow. I'll be ready later. I'll walk through when it feels comfortable." They treat the opening like it's permanent, like the hinges will never rust, like the lock will never click. And then one day, they turn around and the door's gone. Not shut, gone. Like it was never there at all. They're left standing in the empty hallway, haunted by the ghost of a chance they ignored. That's what regret really is. Trying to chase down a door that no longer exists. You can't pry it back open. You can't recreate the moment. It's gone. And you're left with nothing but the echo of what you didn't do. And why do people hesitate? Fear, always fear. Fear of what's behind the door. Fear of leaving what's familiar. Fear of stepping into something they can't control. They pretend they're waiting for the right moment, but that's just a lie dressed up to sound noble. The truth is simple. They're scared. Scared that walking through the door means losing the comfort of where they are. scared that it means facing something that might demand more of them than they're willing to give. So they wait, and waiting becomes a habit. And by the time they gather the courage, the handle is cold, the hinges are locked, and the chance is gone. The funny thing about doors is how they disguise themselves. They don't always look like opportunities. Sometimes they look like risks, like chaos, like pain. Sometimes the door doesn't shine. It creaks, it scares, it unsettles you. And that's why most people don't step through. They only want the doors that feel safe, the ones painted in gold, the ones with pretty signs that say, welcome. But the real doors, the ones that change everything, they rarely look inviting. They look like trouble. They look like storms. They look like mistakes. And only the ones who dare to push through them discover they were never storms at all. They were beginnings. You know what happens when people finally realize doors don't stay open forever. Panic. They scramble, desperate to make up for wasted time. They start clawing at any door they can find, pounding, begging, pleading for another chance. But desperation isn't the same as courage. You can't fake the timing. If you didn't have the strength to step through when it was open, what makes you think you'll have it when it's gone? That's the tragedy. People don't see the value of the door until it's shut, and by then, they're left banging on wood that will never move again. And yet, there's something brutally honest about it. Life doesn't hand out endless invitations. It doesn't give you infinite tries. It gives you doors, just doors. Some open wide, some only a crack, and most without warning. And the only thing that matters is whether you move when they're open. Not tomorrow, not later, not when it's convenient. Now. Because the door doesn't care about your excuses, your fears, your unreadiness. It only cares about whether you had the guts to step through before it closed. But people cling to this fantasy, this sweet little lie, that the door will wait, that if they stall long enough, if they hesitate enough, the door will still be there when they finally work up the nerve. That's the poison they drink. The idea that opportunities are eternal. And when the last second ticks away, when the door slams, the poison burns. Because they realize too late that doors don't stay open forever. They never did. Endings. People run from them, hide from them, cry when they see them coming. But sometimes endings aren't a choice, They're a verdict. The curtain falls, the lights cut out, and that little voice inside says, enough. This chapter finished. The mess, the lies, the chains you've been dragging, over. And in that silence after the break, something stirs. A shift. A crack in the old world where the new one crawls in. You feel it, don't you? The weight of the past peeling off your skin. The sense that what was tolerated yesterday won't survive today. Because when something ends like this, it's not loss. It's transformation, a new stage, a new fire, a new era clawing its way out of the rubble. Every ending is a command to transform, not to cling. You see, people love to hold on. They clutch at scraps, pieces, broken shards of what used to be, as if squeezing tighter will somehow glue the past back together. But endings don't care about your grip. They come with a kind of finality, a brutal whisper that says change or be crushed, and that's the part no one wants to hear. We beg for mercy. We bargain for extensions. We lie to ourselves that maybe things will go back to how they were. But endings, they don't negotiate. They're not polite. They arrive like a blade, slicing through your illusions. And what's left is a choice you never wanted to make. Transform, or stay buried under the ruins. Clinging feels safer, doesn't it? Wrapping yourself around memories, routines, faces that aren't even here anymore. You convince yourself it's loyalty, that it's love, that it's faith, but it's not. It's fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of who you'll become when you finally let go. Because transformation is messy. It's ugly. It tears at the skin of who you used to be. It burns. And no one wants to burn. So instead, you cling to the ashes, pretending they're still flames. But that's the joke. Ashes don't warm you. They choke you. They smother you. And every second you hold them tighter, the colder you become. An ending is not a suggestion. It's not a hint. It's not a gentle nudge saying, maybe it's time to move on. No, it's a command. A sentence handed down from somewhere deeper, sharper, higher than you. And it doesn't wait for your approval. It strips away what you thought you couldn't live without and dares you to survive anyway. And when you do, you're not the same. You can't be. Because transformation isn't about adding something new. It's about destroying what no longer fits. It's about ripping out the roots of the old self and watching what grows in the cracks. And isn't that the cruel part? That transformation doesn't always feel like growth. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like death. You wake up and realize pieces of you are gone. The softness, the innocence, the blind hope. They don't survive the ending. They get buried with it. But in their place, something harder emerges. Something sharper. Something that doesn't flinch when the world pushes. That's the real lesson endings shove down your throat. You don't get to keep who you were. You only get to discover who you'll become when there's no choice left but to adapt. People hate that. They scream at it. They fight it. They cling even harder, desperate to stitch the past onto the present, desperate to live inside a corpse of a life. But the more they cling, the deeper they sink, because endings aren't doors you can lock. They're explosions. They don't leave the old standing. They reduce it to rubble. And clinging to rubble only ensures one thing. You'll bleed on it again and again until the pain forces you to let go transformation, though transformation is freedom disguised as punishment. It feels cruel, but it's the only thing that keeps you alive. Endings force you to face that the version of you that once survived, once thrived, is no longer fit for what's coming next. And so you're broken, and in the breaking, you're reforged. You didn't want it, you didn't ask for it, but you needed it. Because clinging to what would have killed you slower than any ending ever could. Every ending is a command, not a request. You don't get to choose whether the old world collapses. You only choose whether to rise from the wreckage or be buried beneath it. And that's the real joke, that the very thing you feared, the ending you begged to avoid, becomes the reason you become someone unrecognizable, someone forged in fire, someone who couldn't exist without everything first being ripped away. Old chains must break before new paths appear. That's the rule, isn't it? You can't walk forward with your ankles tied, no matter how much you pretend you're moving. And yet, people love their chains. They polish them, decorate them, even convince themselves they're jewelry. Chains of old habits, old fears, old loves that have already turned to dust. They drag them around like trophies, smiling through the weight, whispering, "This is who I am." But here's the reality. Chains don't define you. They confine you. They don't make you whole. They keep you small. And the longer you worship them, the longer you stay in the same cage, circling the same walls, never seeing the door that was always there. The breaking is the ugly part. Oh, it's not graceful, it's not poetic, it's violent. It hurts. Chains cut into your skin when they snap, they tear, they leave scars. That's why so many people choose not to break them at all. They'd rather live with the familiar pain than risk the agony of freedom, because freedom is terrifying. It means no excuses. It means no anchors. It means stepping into a path that hasn't been walked before, without a script, without a guide, without the comfort of blaming the chain. The chain is safe. It gives you someone, something to blame. But when it's gone, then it's just you and the wide, raw silence of possibility, and you know what's funny. Most of the time, the chain isn't even real. It's not locked, not sealed. It's held together by fear, by the idea that without it, you'll fall apart. But the truth is, the chain is what's been strangling you all along. Every time you tried to move forward and felt resistance, every time you wondered why life felt so heavy, every time you saw the same mistakes on repeat, that was the chain laughing, whispering, "Stay here, stay stuck, stay small," and people listen. They listen because chains are familiar, and familiar feels safer than freedom. But then comes the moment, the breaking point. The point where the chain hurts more than the fear of letting it go. And when that happens, you don't ease out of it. You don't gently untie yourself. You rip. You scream. You fight against it like an animal gnawing off its own limb. And it feels like death. It feels like betrayal. It feels like you're losing a part of yourself. Because in a way, you are. Those chains have been with you so long they've blended into your identity. But breaking them doesn't mean you're losing yourself. It means you're losing the lie you wrapped yourself in, and the path. It doesn't show itself until the chains are gone. That's the cruel irony. People want to see the road before they let go. They want assurance. They want clarity. They want a promise of safety. But the path only appears in the absence of the weight. As long as you're shackled, your eyes can't see what's beyond the walls. It's only in the breaking, in the bleeding, in the raw moment after the chain falls, that the horizon starts to open. And when it does, it's blinding, terrifying, endless. You almost miss the chains, because at least they gave you boundaries. But freedom doesn't hand you a map. It hands you space. And space is far scarier than confinement, So the question becomes, how much do you want to see? Do you want to keep polishing the same rusted chains, convincing yourself they're gold? Or do you want to feel the burn, the sting, the violence of snapping them apart? Because that's the price. You can't keep the old and still demand the new. You can't drag your chains onto the next road and expect it to lead anywhere different. Old chains must break, not bend, not loosen, not shift. Break, and in the breaking, something hidden, something buried, something waiting finally has the room to emerge. That's when the new path appears. Not before, not during, but after. After the scars, after the silence, after the pieces of who you were lie scattered around you. And that's the point you realize. You were never walking at all. You were only dragging. And now the weight is gone. And every step forward is finally your own goodbye forces you to meet a new version of yourself. You think you know who you are, your habits, your jokes, your routines, the way you smile when certain people walk into the room. But the second someone leaves, all of that gets torn apart. The person you were with them, the version of you that only existed because of their presence, dies the moment they walk away, and you don't realize it right away. No, it sneaks up on you. One morning you look in the mirror and realize the reflection staring back doesn't carry the same light in the eyes. The laugh sounds different. The skin feels heavier. You're no longer the same because every goodbye is a burial of the old you, and people don't like that part. They cling to the memory of who they were, like holding on to a corpse will somehow bring it back to life. They replay old conversations, wear old clothes, revisit old places, trying to resurrect the self that once fit so perfectly into that relationship, that friendship, that moment in time. But goodbyes don't allow resurrection. They demand reinvention. The old you has been carved out, gutted, replaced by silence. And what's left is something raw, unfamiliar, and frightening. That's the real punchline. Every goodbye doesn't just take someone away from you. It rips away the identity you built around them. At first, it feels like loss. Pure, endless loss. Like walking around hollowed out, carrying a shadow instead of a body. You keep expecting to find the old you. Like maybe if you just keep going through the motions, they'll come back. But they don't. The laugh doesn't sound the same. The smile doesn't feel as natural. The routine feels broken. And that's when the realization creeps in: the old you is gone for good. You're left with a stranger, a version of yourself built from pain, from absence, from the jagged edges of letting go. And whether you like it or not, you have to live with that stranger. Sometimes that stranger is bitter, colder, sharper than you ever imagined. You find yourself snapping at little things, isolating, distrusting, because the wound left behind has poisoned you. Other times, that stranger is quiet, distant, softer in a way that feels almost numb. You pull away from people, from risks, from love, because you know what it costs when goodbyes come. Each goodbye shapes you differently, but the pattern is the same. You are never the same person after. You are forced to meet a new version of yourself every single time someone important leaves. And isn't it strange how people rarely notice? To the outside world, you still look the same. You still walk the same streets, still wear the same face, still say the same phrases. But inside, it's a battlefield. Inside, you're negotiating with this new self, trying to figure out what to keep and what to bury. The world sees stability, but you feel chaos. The world sees continuity, but you feel fracture. And you can't explain it to them, not really, because how do you explain that you've become someone you never agreed to be? That goodbyes sculpted you into something foreign without asking your permission. But here's the part no one likes to admit. Sometimes that new version of you is stronger, harder, unshakable in ways the old you could never be. Because pain has a way of stripping away illusions. It kills the naive parts, the fragile parts, the trusting parts. And while that feels like loss, it's also transformation. The goodbye took pieces of you, but it left behind a survivor, a version of you that knows how to carry weight, a version of you that knows what it costs to love, to lose, to rebuild. That new version isn't soft, but it's real. And maybe that's what every goodbye is for, to strip away the masks and force you to meet the raw, unvarnished self underneath. You don't choose these transformations. They're forced on you. You don't get to say, "No, thank you. I'd rather stay who I was." The moment someone leaves, that self is gone, and you're shoved into a new skin, whether you're ready or not. And maybe that's the cruel truth. Every goodbye isn't just about losing them. It's about losing you. The only thing left is to figure out who this new version is and whether you can stomach living as them. new era demands sacrifice of the old self. That's the cost people don't want to pay. They dream about fresh beginnings, about rebirth, about rising from the ashes. But they still want to carry the ashes with them. They cling to old patterns, old comforts, old scars, dragging them into a future that has no space for them. And then they wonder why nothing changes, why the new era feels suspiciously like the old one, because you can't step into something new while gripping what's already dead. Something has to burn. Something has to be given up. And most of the time, that something is you. The version of you that's already rotting, but pretending to be alive. People mistake sacrifice for loss. They cry over it, rage at it, act like it's unfair. But sacrifice isn't theft, it's trade. You give up one thing to gain another. The problem is, the thing you give up is usually the part of yourself you're most comfortable with. The self that knows the rules, knows the routines, knows the safety of staying small. And giving that up feels like suicide, like tearing away your own skin. But that's what the new era demands. It doesn't want the version of you that barely survived yesterday. It wants the version forged in fire, cut loose from chains, stripped of weakness. And you don't get that version unless you're willing to bleed out the old one.